Now with this banning of SWIFT and with the export of energy, exports of crude oil, basically halted because of this SWIFT ban, how much could Europe and how much could, for example, Germany hurt? Because there's only so much time that you can find alternative, right? You can probably buy shale gas from the USA, but the production needs time to pick up. And Norway's natural gas is already running at full capacity, transferring to Western Europe. So how badly do you think this could hurt Europe? Let's start with you, Ms. Wang.
So I do not believe this kind of financial ban over energy exports can sustain. Because let's face it, the European countries also have the inflation problem. The domestic politics are getting more complicated over the years. With COVID, no politicians want to lose vote just because they can't control domestic inflation. Guarantee the energy supply from Russia would be quite crucial. Right now, I believe much of the energy product is still an exemption from the current SWIFT ban because it only applies to 2 major banks. And for Russia, it can still use a third country trade to get around to a degree in the sanctions from Western countries. But there is a limit on how much more that the Western society want to tolerate this kind of economic sanction. Because for US and Europe, they can sanction countries like Iran or Cuba relatively easily. Their economies are quite closed and just much less important than Russia. And for Russia to have its economic and political influence now, it is quite skillful in its diplomacy as well. So we don't see the kind of isolation of Russia in the international community. And that would put more pressure for Europe and the US as well. They need to consider how to maintain their solidarity and keep the domestic voters happy without losing their ground to Russia. It's a tricky balance.
Professor Liu, how much could Europe stand to lose? Because according to the Bank of International Settlements, European lenders hold the lion's share of the nearly $30 billion in foreign banks' exposure to Russia.
I think at the moment that the exposure to the Russian banks in the Western countries is not so big. As we know that in the past year, the business between Russia and the European countries is not so big and still under control range, limited. So that's why that the risky for the Russian banks at the moment, I mean, for the reserve is not so serious. But the problem is that for the Western countries or SWIFT embargoed central bank, this is really a big problem. Why the Russian 10 years before announced that if they have why to sweep Russia out of the SWIFT, that a declare of a war. That mainly means that if expel the central bank of Russia out of the SWIFT, out of the international settlement, that could be really a real earthquake in the financial sections in the global market. Because all the Russian reserves and also Russian debts, the loans and the credits only controlled by the Russian central bank. And also this payment mechanism between central bank with the SWIFT and with other central banks will be cut off. That could be really a big problem, a big serious. I think nobody at the moment is willing to do this. That's why the Western countries is trying to have a selected Russian banks that to be blocked and out of the SWIFT because they have really considered the real consequences that could hurt Russia, but also will hurt the world global market, especially the European countries. And as I know that I have many friends in Russia and also in Germany and Switzerland, yesterday, today, even talking about their price for the gas. Many people the citizens or residents really become very consciousness, very upset because of the conflicts between Russia and the European country. And at one side, they do not agree that the operation of Russian army in Ukraine, but also they do not agree the operation and the sanctions that against Russia, because really their daily payment for gas, for crude oil in Germany already increased. So that's where really have a bigger influence on the market. That's why German people and residents and my banking friend in Switzerland and also in Austria, they are a little bit really concerned about the future. They do not see a clear picture of the war.